Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Monday everybody. I hope you had a restful weekend and have a productive week ahead. Speaking of productive weeks ahead, a piece of housekeeping to begin the episode. I have been producing daily episodes of China Update for several months now. It's been many months since I've taken a day off. With this in mind, I think it probably is important that I do take a few days. I feel like the last couple of days, especially yesterday's episode, weren't quite as sharp as I would like them to be. This week, China is on vacation for the Lunar New Year holiday period, so perhaps this week would be a good opportunity for me to take a few days off. So I will be taking this Wednesday and probably also Thursday off. I hope this is not too much of an inconvenience for everybody. I've timed this period off to coincide with what should be a very slow news week in China because the country is currently on vacation. As always, thank you so much everybody for the support. Thank you for your understanding. And with that said, let's jump into the episode. It's Monday, so let's begin the week with the latest salient economic updates. And first up, according to data published over the weekend by the People's Bank of China, in January, loan growth in China fell to a record low, expanding by 10.4% year-on-year, the slowest pace in monthly data going back to 2003. Duncan Wrigley, chief China economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics, observed that the slowdown means, quote, still relatively sluggish credit demand, despite net new social financing and net new loans beating market expectations. But market expectations were low, end quote. Then turning to the data related to housing, where net medium and long-term loans to households, a proxy for mortgages, rose to the highest level since early 2023. He added, quote, on the surface, this is a solid figure, very close to January 2017 or 2018, when the housing market was in much better shape, but it's too early to pop open the champagne. End quote. Incredibly, however, even as loan rates have slowed, debt has surged, suggesting quite poor loan allocation. Total social financing, that is, total debt, was up 6.5 trillion RMB in January. This is a 9.5% increase year-on-year. Speaking on these data, Peking University's Michael Pettis observed, quote, January always represents the biggest monthly increase in the year, but this year's increase exceeded that of any previous year and came in well above expectations. As of the end of January, outstanding total social financing in China was 384 trillion yuan, which is equivalent to 305% of 2023 GDP. Outstanding total social financing was 9.5% higher nominally than it was at the end of January 2023, and while some analysts are saying that this was on the low side, that's only because the GDP deflator was negative during this period. In real terms, this was still a pretty big increase. Since 2019, nominal GDP is up 28%, with much of that consisting of soft budget growth, while the debt needed to support that growth is up 50%. End quote. That final point is worth repeating. Since 2019, GDP is up 28%, but the amount of debt needed to support that growth is up 50%. Next up for the economic updates. According to a new report from Griffith University in Australia and Fudan University in Shanghai, China's investment into Belt and Road countries rose last year to the highest since 2018, with total investment in 2023 surging by 80% versus 2022. Though this was from a low base. The report observed that last year's performance brought total engagement with the infrastructure initiative to more than 1 trillion yuan since 2013. The report made several other notable findings. 1. China's energy-related engagement in 2023 was the greenest in absolute and relative terms in any period since the Belt and Road Initiative's inception, reaching $7.9 billion. 2. China is increasingly investing in electricity transmission, over $7 billion. 3. Investments as a share of Belt and Road Initiative engagement reached record levels at over 52%, indicating higher ownership and risk-taking of Chinese enterprises. 4. 2023 saw technology investment surge, growing over 1,000%. 5. China's companies strongly invested in metals and mining, which are particularly relevant to the green transition, like lithium and batteries for electric vehicles. Of course, these are incredibly strategic commodities, a theme we will be touching on more in tomorrow's video. Indeed, engagement related to batteries reached about $8 billion, driven by plans for a battery factory in South Korea and car plants in countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, Brazil, and Hungary. And the final point, Africa became the largest recipient of Chinese engagement, overtaking Middle Eastern countries. The average size of building projects announced last year was less than $400 million, the second lowest figure since the BRI began in 2013, with the report explaining that this was likely due to China's transition to so-called small and beautiful projects. The report concludes that China, after years of declining investment, is refocusing on the Belt and Road Initiative, adding, quote, "Part of this expectation is driven by challenges in China's domestic economic development, where Chinese companies seek opportunities in other countries." End quote. Next up, we're going to examine two recent disquieting pieces on China's nuclear weapons policy and development. One from an American voice, the other from a Chinese voice. But just quickly, if you enjoyed today's video or getting some value from it, it's a huge help if you can hit the like button. Subscribing is also a huge help for the channel. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description below for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep the channel financially sustainable. The first piece is a recent article from veteran China journalist Chris Buckley of the US-based New York Times on the evolution of PRC strategic nuclear doctrine and weapons development under Xi Jinping. The piece is called "Fear and Ambition Propel Xi's Nuclear Acceleration." We examine a few excerpts of the piece here. 19 days after taking power as China's leader, Xi Jinping convened the generals overseeing the country's nuclear missiles and issued a blunt demand. China had to be ready for possible confrontation with a formidable adversary, he said, signaling that he wanted a more potent nuclear capability to counter the threat. Their force, he told the generals, was a pillar of our status as a great power. They must, Xi said, advance strategic plans for responding under the most complicated and difficult conditions to military intervention by a powerful enemy. According to an official internal summary of the speech on December 2012 to China's nuclear and conventional missile arm. A powerful strategic deterrent capability can force the enemy to pull back from rash action, subduing them without going to war. Chen Jiaqi, a researcher at China's National Defense University, wrote in a paper in 2021, "Whoever masters more advanced technologies and develops strategic deterrent weapons that can leave others behind in the dust will have a powerful voice in times of peace and hold the initiative in times of war," he said. This article draws on Mr. Xi's internal speeches and dozens of People's Liberation Army reports and studies, many in technical journals, to trace the motivations of China's nuclear buildup. Some have been cited in recent studies of China's nuclear posture. Many others have not been brought up before. Here ends the direct quote of that piece. This article is well worth a read for anyone interested in this space, as is this second piece from Tong Zhao, a senior fellow with the Nuclear Policy Program at Carnegie, China, which warns of a narrowing of policy debates within Beijing leadership to, quote, "heightened internal incoherence in strategic decisions," end quote. The piece is incredibly candid, considering it's coming from a Chinese commentator, demonstrating just how concerned the author is about what is happening in Beijing. This piece is called "Underlying Challenges and Near-Term Opportunities for Engaging China," and once again we quote selected excerpts directly. With China experiencing significant internal transformations under Xi, the shift toward a more centralized and personalistic decision-making model has markedly heightened internal incohesion in strategic decision-making, including the expansion of nuclear capabilities, the apparent sidelining of nuclear policy experts in policy discussions, the growing tendency of bureaucrats to align with and reinforce the paramount leader's view on power politics, the reduction in the scope for internal debate, and the erosion of checks and balances have made achieving policy coherence increasingly challenging. China is deviating notably from its long-standing nuclear policy in several aspects. These changes include a shift toward simultaneous quantitative expansion and qualitative improvement of capabilities, and the development of a nuclear triad with a massive investment in silo-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Other changes include a transition from a relaxed posture to a rapid response stance, with the potential adoption of a launch under attack doctrine and new official narratives directing Chinese nuclear forces toward achieving strategic decision victories. Many Chinese nuclear policy experts find themselves perplexed by the logic and rationale behind this unprecedented nuclear expansion. This confusion raises concerns that the shift in China's nuclear policy may be more reflective of the top leader's political instincts rather than a carefully considered strategy aligned with a clearly defined consensus goal within the policy community. In a system of open and free debate, Chinese leaders might have recognized that China's buildup could trigger US responses, potentially deteriorating China's security environment. Yet basic scrutiny of strategic decisions is becoming increasingly challenging. In the United States, there is a notable underestimation of the disorganized nature of China's nuclear expansion and the growing issue of policy incoherence within it. Consequently, US strategists often presume that China's nuclear buildup is underpinned by well-thought-out rationality, clear objectives, and strategic long-term planning. This perception gives rise to prevalent concerns that Beijing's nuclear growth signals a shift to an offensive nuclear posture, aiming not merely for parity with Washington, but possibly for nuclear superiority. Nonetheless, remarks by top Chinese officials indicate a continued preference for asymmetric deterrence, at least for the time being. Okay, that ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Monday, have a productive week, and I will see you all tomorrow.